Hi. I'm Pat Zaborowski.
And I'm Christine Bernie Jagadesh.
When did you first go to Nepal? I'm Fran, by the way.
Love it. Okay, Pat, go ahead.
I
'Cause you
think
did
I
the
went in
first trip.
1997, right? That was the first trip, 1997. Very first trip to Nepal. Yep, we went to Gorkha.
My first trip to Nepal was a year later in 1998. And it was the second trip, and we went to Gorkha. I think. It was the landing strip spot, wherever that was.
Yeah, because we walked to Gorkha. Yeah, we trekked to Gorkha,
Okay.
I remember.
All
So
right.
because we went through that landing strip. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we took we went with the medical team. Yep, we supported the medical team. I guess because we knew Steve Simpson, who led the trip, he wanted to go. And so he got together a team mostly from Calvary Chapel, Philadelphia. And we set off to Nepal, and he knew where to go, where to take us. We met translators. We met a pastor there who could take us around and show us the area. And yeah, and I just felt that the Lord was telling me to go, so I did. Yeah. So I didn't go with any skills. I went and supported in
You
the
have a lot of
pharmacy.
skills.
Yeah. So I was sort of the pharmacist, although I'm not anywhere near a pharmacist. But the doctors and the nurses that were there could tell me what to do. Go get this, go get that, put this many in a bag. So, yep, it was great.
So my first trip was in 1998, which was the second trip after Pat had gone. And the funny story connected to that is that I remember when the first trip was going out, and I was sitting in the sanctuary, and they announced from the pulpit that they were putting together a medical team to go on this trip to Nepal. And I had never really left the country, maybe, I've been to Canada, that counted. And but I had a bunch of Indian friends, and I was comfortable eating Indian food and knew about Indian culture. And I thought at that time, oh wow, they're looking for a medical team in Nepal. Nepal's that little country right next to India, very similar culture. I was like, wow, that's neat. I thought, wow, I wonder if they need a pharmacist. And so I remember really the Lord putting that on my heart. And so after the service, I went to go find this guy called Steve Simpson and went into the bookstore and asked for him. And so I went and met him and introduced myself. And he said to me, oh, thanks for your interest. Oh, you're a pharmacist? He said, well, we're putting the team together right now. He says, I have a lot of women. He said, I'm really looking for a few more men on the trip right now. And I said, oh, okay. All right, well, no problem. And, left that day and didn't think much more of it. So that was 1997, right? That was the first trip?
97 was the first trip.
97. Yeah. That was 1997.
Yeah.
So now fast forward another 6 months or a year or whatever. And so sitting in the sanctuary again, and they said, we're putting together our next trip to Nepal. And we're putting together a team if anybody's interested. So again, that little stirring in your heart. And I thought, I'm going to go find that Steve Simpson guy again. And so I went into the bookstore and reintroduced myself to him. Hi, I'm Christine, blah, blah, blah. I'm a pharmacist. And I said, oh, I'm interested in the Nepal trip. I don't know if you could, use me. And he was like, you're a pharmacist? Oh, we could have used a pharmacist on the last trip. And I'm like, So at that time he turns, and we're standing in the bookstore, and he says, oh, well, you should meet Pat. She served as the pharmacist on our last trip. So there's Pat, in the bookstore doing her thing. And so that's how Pat and I met. And so we got started. So needless to say, I went on the 1998 trip, and I served as the pharmacist on the team, and Pat was my pharmacy assistant. So she was very happy to work with me, so she didn't have to run the whole pharmacy by herself. And then, and we have since been on other programs and activities and engaged together in various things, and have been friends since. And so it's been lots of fun.
What was the trip about? Like who were in the trip? Like, people that went with you. And what was the trip, mission about?
How many times have you been to Nepal, Pat, overall?
I've been six.
6 times
altogether.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure I could even.
I know.
I can count. It's not more than that by any means, but different trips we've been on. And I did mine all kind of in a very short stint, where I think you did some, and then some later, and some in between. So talk a little bit about some of the trips.
Most of the time we've gone, it was some type of a medical team. It's either been a regular medical team, or one time I went with an eye care team, for example. And we always go with that premise, and then we present the gospel. We present the gospel in a lot of different ways, either as a play. We've taken the Jesus movie. We've done a lot, as much as we can, with children on many of the trips, not all the trips, but many of the trips. And we've had probably dozens of different people over the years go. Some doctors, some nurses, some just wanting to work with children. Yeah, for all different reasons, people feel led to go.
First trip where they
Yeah.
met Patty Geary
It
for the
was.
first time, because
Yeah.
when I came on the second trip, they were in search of Patty Geary.
Mhm.
So you start.
It
that
was,
story.
yeah, the very first year that we went, we took a medical team, and we were in Gorka, and if I remember right, okay, so we had people coming in, coming out. There's not really a particular mode of transportation there at all. Pretty much everybody walks everywhere. So we found toward the end of the medical trip, I think it was your dad. Unless it was your mom, I can't remember which. I think it was your mom actually carried you into the medical team. And they discovered that what was wrong was something that we could not help you with at that time, but probably could after looking in and researching and finding the different connections that doctors had back in the United States. We probably could help. And so I know they, through a translator, spoke, I'm pretty sure it was your mom, spoke with your mom, explained what it was, the difficulty that you had and what they could probably do about it. And that we would, as soon as we got home from Nepal, we would follow that up. So the next year, which is when we went, right? The next year we had gone, and at that time there wasn't much cell phone usage or anything there, so it wasn't like we could call ahead and let the family know that we were coming, meet us at such and such a place, nothing like that. So we prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And toward the end, it was a medical team again. Toward the end of the medical team, we were literally the day we were leaving. We were all praying. We were all holding hands and just praying. We had never been able to find you again, or your mom, or a dad, or anything, and just prayed that the Lord would just, intervene and just somehow help us. And literally, we were leaving, and we drop hands and turn around, and there is your dad standing there holding you. So we were like, oh, we were in tears.
So I remember it because it was all week, I had heard this story of this little Patty, and we're hoping we can find her family, and her family's going to come, and all week there's no Patty and no family. And I remember that was like the way down to the end. It was the last day, and I had heard about it all week, and I remember kind of walking up on the scene, and like everybody was there kind of gathered around you and your dad, and it was like, oh, we found her, she's here, and it was like, the prized possession of the week kind of, excitement. And so that began, the relationship and the conversation and continuing, where, eventually then you were able to come to the U.S. and get the care that you needed, and the follow-up, and the rest is history. There's a long story that goes from that day until where we are today. But yeah, you were just a little thing back then, and and obviously had some significant medical concerns then that we were, even for many of us, I mean, as a pharmacist myself, I don't see a lot of complex medical conditions. So to be involved in that and to see a child in a situation where we know we could only do limited care in a mobile medical camp like that, the thought of being able to bring this child to the U.S. to truly get the care that she would need was really very moving for all of us, and certainly was for me as well. My trips back to Nepal, fast forward a couple other times, eventually you came to be in the house at the girls' home, which was kind of a combo home, I think, back then, with Padam and others. And
do you remember what year?
Let's see. So probably would have been about 2000, 2001.
Wow.
I think my last trip to Nepal was maybe 2002, kind of that time frame. So I was there about 98 to 2002. And and you were there by then. I don't know exactly what time frame you would have come into the house, but you were a regular part of our community by then. And I remember the picture. I'm going to grab the picture of the video.
I think one thing that stood out to me was your mom and dad's perseverance. That to bring you, for God, like it was a God miracle that you were still with us, because it was pretty serious situation. And your mom, I remember, and your dad both walked for days carrying you to get the help that they felt led to get. It was amazing.
Yeah. So I remember, so I'm trying to think when this could be. So I'll show you the photo so you can see it in here. I still have this photo in my house. Here we are a million years later. But I did go back one time when I was living in Florida. So it might have been more like 2004, somewhere in there, maybe a little later. So this picture might have been from that time frame too. But being back there, and the couple times I've been back to see you progressing and doing well, and really wonderful. And remember, that was my first medical mission trip, and was to Nepal, and that's where we found you kind of for the second time. The team did. So it was a very special kind of moving time for me, and just wonderful memories of being able to impact individuals by these short-term medical mission trips. And you're living proof of that today when we look at you as this beautiful young woman who is able to walk on her own and speak perfect English and has completed college and has done all these amazing things, and sitting here in America with us, has the opportunity to come back and visit, and we get to spend time, and it's really wonderful to think about where that was back in 1998, 2002, 2004. This was a long time ago, and God clearly had his hand on your life, and really truly had a divine appointment for each one of us to participate in that in our small ways. And he orchestrated all of that to make that happen. So I feel very privileged to be that tiny part of that. I'm sure Pat feels the same. And Patty, as we talk to you, and you as living proof of that today, clearly God had an amazing plan for you to bring you out of your situation, and your parents to have that willingness and that intuition to come and to get you the care, and to do that, to bring you to where you are today. So I know it's been a journey, but a wonderful part.
Thank you.
Well, I know Pat was on my team and Steve was on my team. I know that's pretty funny.
Was Dennis there? Or?
I don't remember.
I'm
Dennis
not
and
sure
John
Dennis
went there
was
yet.
the early ones. Probably Gordon was rather.
Harris?
Maybe Harris.
Or Harris, sorry, Harris Gordon.
But I don't remember who else. I don't honestly have to look.
Yeah.
Was Ryan, Carrie, or none?
Carrie was on my first one, which was where the year that your mom brought you in. Yeah. So Carrie was definitely there. And there was a female doctor, I can't remember her name. Paul Caracappa was the very first year.
On the first one, but not the second one.
But not the 98,
Not the next couple of ones.
I know. I have to I scrapbooks from all of them. I'll have to get them out and show you. And we'll see who was there, because I really can't remember. I still have my shirts. We made shirts then.
Random people that that maybe did a one-time trip with us type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could put in. I would have think that Harris would have been there at that time.
Because he did go for the first.
Yeah, because he
years.
was around right from the beginning.
What was your experience like? I know it was rainy season when you went.
The first year was like
Oh my
nuts.
goodness. Yeah.
First year we went.
Like,
it
what
was
were you
always like a mistake.
thinking?
We
Like,
went in August.
when you...
Yeah, those are good questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell them.
I know.
Yeah, like-
97,
Yeah.
the big thing was we had gone during monsoon, and it was God's grace that we got to have the medical clinic, because for 3 days it just poured and poured and poured. And we prayed and prayed and prayed. It rained so hard and was so muddy, there wasn't even a way to set up the clinics. So we prayed and prayed and prayed. And the rain slowed. So I remember the men that were there in Gorka laying out bricks for us to try to walk from where our stuff was into where we put up tents for the clinic. So, and that the Lord held the rain off for part of probably 3 or 4 days. So we were able to have those clinics. But it was something very, very hot. But it was fun. We slept in tents and, on wooden beds, which was kind of nice. I mean, and we did a lot of hiking, because there really is not a way into the country. There was no mobility at all but walking. So that was really something.
I was thinking of some funny stories there. So I'll tell my impression of that first trip, because it's my first medical mission trip, first time really out of the country, and we go to like rural Nepal. So that's a pretty big jump. A lot of people said that to me, like in retrospect, that was your first trip? Yeah, that was my first trip ever. But, you just jump right in. But we stayed at the time, they had just made some type of a building structure. It was kind of a big open space with like cement ground and a roof and a covering kind of space.
Yep.
It must have had bathrooms, but not showers. Because I remember the shower was some kind of outdoor homemade thing, you know, with some water, something falling. I'm not even sure how that worked out. One of the things I remember is that was shocking to me. Kind of the first couple days was we were gonna probably make chicken curry or chicken biryani or something, and so they got some chickens. And they were real chickens, like live chickens running around. And that was kind of shocking for me, growing up in America where chicken comes in a cellophane package from the grocery store. So, and then they killed the chickens and plucked the feathers and then kind of chop, whoop, the whole thing goes in the pot, you know. And so some interesting pieces show up in the biryani or the chicken curry or whatever. So you always have to be a little careful what you're eating when you're in Nepal or India or anywhere. But that was something I really remembered there. The other piece was our medical camp was in a tent, and it was really very efficient and really great, considering it was really only our second trip. But you know, a long tent which was divided into rooms, and so they were treatment rooms, like maybe a triage area, and then down the end was the pharmacy. And we had brought these benches in from I don't know where, that building or wherever, and we set up, you know, all along the edges of the tent with these benches, and we had all the meds stacked up on it like a pharmacy. I mean, it's like as simple as it could get. But and I can envision this picture of Pat and I kind of standing next to it. But we have some other ones like that where we're in all these strange places with like meds piled up in various places, to just makeshift pharmacy wherever we could do those. But it worked. It was really effective, and it worked really well to have it kind of straight along in that tent. And just, you know, we ended up where it worked out well to have a medical camp in that way. So pretty rural, you know, pretty much on the landing strip, or next to the landing strip, or wherever that is. And the other funny story is thinking about telling that when Pat said you have to like hike into places. I remember one time, I'm not sure it was that trip or another one variation of that, but we would bring at that time these big duffel bags.
Oh my goodness.
And so we'd have all our stuff in this big duffel bag, and we get there and the whole team comes in, everybody's got these big duffel bags. And so we pull up to, you know, wherever we are, and we have to hike up some space to get to wherever we're going to. And so all these porters, like Sherpas, come over to you know, carry our stuff. And so what Pat and I had been doing up to then, her and I both had these big duffel bags. And so we would take turns, like, well, first we'll carry mine, had a handle on each side, Pat on one side, me on the other, and we'd carry it, put it down, and then we'd go and get hers, and we'd carry it. So two of us on one duffel bag. So we're like, okay, all these guys are gonna come carry all our stuff. And so sure enough, this little tiny, like, 10-year-old boy comes up, picks up either mine or Pat's bag, you know, throws it on his, you know, strap on the back of his head, and whoop, up the mountain. And Pat and I look at each other like, took two of us to carry our duffel bag, and this little boy is going to carry it up the hill in his flip-flops, I might add, as we know. And we're just like, that's pretty humbling. So those are also the kind of shocking moments, you know, of being a American who is very privileged. So.
Yep, good memory, good recount.
Lots of funny stories. Oh my goodness, I have some crazy stories, but
I couldn't get them cut.
I don't want to get too into. I have some that are like me getting sick in Nepal, but funny stories about those. So Steve Simpson will tell funny stories about that. Sitting at pt-1 National Park, and I remember fainting once, and like waking up, everyone standing on top over me. I'm like, what happened? You know. And then another time, I like talking to Steve literally in those little chairs sitting out in the pt-1 place where we were staying, and I'm talking to him, having a cup of tea because my stomach was upset, and I literally like turned, threw up, and then like turned back and like continued the conversation. And he was like, wow, okay. And so we kind of got used to. I got used to kind of like, you're probably going to get sick at least one time while you were on these trips, just one time, and so you're down for a day. And we used to sometimes say that was kind of your prayer day, you know, because everybody goes to the camp that day and continues on with the mission, and you're maybe back at the hotel or wherever you're staying, and that's where the Lord wanted you that day, is to just pray and be calm and at peace. So even the days that you think like, oh, you're sick, it's okay, you know, it's just part of the process, and you know, it's just your day to be calm and quiet and to yourself, because sometimes we're just running around busy and doing too many things, and so it's always funny and fun. You know, we make it fun no matter what, you know.
And amazing experiences. There just were just a lot of experience. One time we were just walking on the beach. I think it was in Chitwan also. Well, I guess like the beach, like
by the river.
Yeah. Yep. And I remember there was a guy that just gave us elephant rides. We just had that elephant kneel down. Yeah, I don't know how the guy did it. He hoofs us up onto the elephant, and we're just riding this elephant down the shoreline. Yeah, oh, that was amazing to me. They're just so happy, wonderful people that are just so happy to see you and very accommodating, and that was fun. Experiences you won't get anywhere else.
I think one thing that I think about in our time in Nepal is, you know, the people that we worked with and that we ministered to is a very endearing and loving culture, and you know, everywhere we go, people are very happy to welcome us and to see us. Also, kind of the thought that many of them had never heard the name Jesus Christ before. That was a very surprising thing to me, I think, too. I think in my head, I might have known that, but you're literally showing, and in many cases, we do the medical camp during the day, and we'd have the Jesus movie playing in the evening or something along those lines. And for many people, we'd say, we're going to show a movie about Jesus tonight. And they'd be like, okay, have you ever heard the name Jesus or who that is? And then, no, I've never heard of that. And, you know, for us growing up in America, where it's impossible to not have heard the name Jesus Christ, it's on every corner in the radio and a billboard and, you know, everything. Yeah. And Christmas for that matter. And to think that, you know, there's so many people around the world that have never even heard the name, no less know the story or the relationship that can be developed. And yet by us being there, we can help facilitate that in some way, even if it's just giving out some medication or sometimes it's just a smile or helping someone or carrying some bag or not carrying a bag. But we're helping facilitate something that can be so life impactful for people. And we saw that many people came to know the Lord, or at least were interested to learn more about Jesus. I think, you know, they're hearing about it for the first time. It's so overwhelming. But I think that the culture of people, we found that they were very interested to listen to us. They were a very loving type of hospitable culture that were coming and sharing this. They would be open and want to listen. And clearly the Lord preparing their heart ahead of time before our arrival as well. So, you know, that's a beautiful thing, a beautiful thing. And in some ways very challenging because they don't know, you know, the concept of Jesus Christ, but in some ways refreshing because you don't have to address some of the kind of post-Christian cultures that we see in other countries or even what we see in America. So there's so many beautiful things about Nepal and the times
amazing.
there.
Oh yeah, one of the movies, thinking on that same line, one of the translators after the Jesus movie was over, a number of the people mostly it was men, but that I remember, raised their hand that they wanted to know more about Jesus and know more about becoming a Christian. And I asked one of the translators to ask this one particular man, what was it that was so interesting to him that drew him? I mean, I know it's Holy Spirit, but he's not going to be able to voice that. So the translator asked him, and he said that from what he has seen, that he said, your God did this for everybody. It doesn't matter what caste I'm in. He said he did this and offers this to everybody. So he wanted that, which I thought was just so great.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. And you're right. There wasn't anything they had to leave behind. All the little hang-ups Americans have, or not, I shouldn't bash Americans, but all the hang-ups that other people have that they don't want to come to know the Lord, or they don't think they need the Lord, and they don't have any of that. They see what the Lord offers them and what He did for them. So it's cool.
Yeah, so our time in Nepal was always very special. It's very much a privilege to be involved in the ministry and to have served in those small ways. And Pat and I became friends as a result of it.
And look, now you have friend.
Yeah, and Fran, and you, Pat.
Oh, thank you. That's so
And everyone
nice.
else along the way we've met.
Yeah.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's
Yes.
been wonderful.
We remember you cooking chicken in our pot.
Absolutely. Lots of other things
Yeah.
along the way, and that, like making chicken curry in your kitchen and a lot of others too.
Oh,
So
thank you.
wonderful.
Yeah.